All right, Mike McAllister joining us. Talk a little transfer portal spring game. Where do you want to start today, Mike?
Let's start with spring game.
All right. Well, what were your takeaways from the spring game, Mike? Big question.
Yeah. So I thought the freshman quarterbacks, Beelan and Carney, definitely flashed some ability. Like, you can see why the coaching staff would be high on them and the potential for their development, et cetera. But I didn't think either showed me that, like, they're ready to be a serious competitor for the starting quarterback position right now. I think they need some seasoning and being in the program and working on some things, et cetera. And then I thought Jakari was kind of up and down, had some good throws, had some rough throws, kind of similar to Michael Johnson. But I was kind of surprised by some of the standouts, like Darius Johnson, the freshman wide receiver. I didn't expect to be someone that I'd be talking about, or Jordan Montanez, the walk-on running back, who I thought might have looked the best of the running backs, to be quite frank, even though I thought Easton Willis had a couple of good moments. And then from a defensive line standpoint, just seems like they got a lot of guys. So we didn't get to see a ton in terms of what, the pass rushing situation would be. It was very vanilla from a play calling standpoint on both sides of the ball. But I don't know, seeing Demetrius Samuels play both sides was pretty cool too. I know they talked about it, but actually seeing it, even though it's a spring game, was kind of a cool thing. So I definitely think there were some interesting moments in there.
Is there a way to improve your program out of the transfer portal that's opening on Wednesday?
Yeah, there certainly is. Now, it depends on the quality that enters, and players can enter for a lot of reasons. I don't think anyone expected Tennessee's quarterback to be in the transfer portal at this window, if you would talk to them weeks or months ago. So you never know who's going to enter or why. Someone could get irritated with the way they're being treated by a coaching staff, even though they're in line to start, and you could get a quality player that can make an impact for you. You could have players that are stuck behind other really good players, someone at, one of these loaded programs, the Georgias, the Alabamas, et cetera, that is good enough to contribute on an FBS level team or Power 5, Power 4 conference level team, and they're just stuck behind All-Americans. And so they could enter the portal, be someone that contributes for you. Jackson Meeks had a really good year last year, and I know he was an early portal addition, but he wasn't someone that if he had entered in the post-spring window would have been someone that everyone would have had on their radar. He was a special teamer at Georgia, didn't contribute much offensively, comes to Syracuse, finds the right role with the right system and the right situation, has a big year, and now he's an NFL draft prospect. So, yeah, you can find guys. That's where you're scouting. You really rely on your ability to evaluate talent.
Mike, I said this on Saturday watching that I'm like, I know this is not fair, but Kyle McCord ain't here. I understand this is not a fair statement to make. We also didn't see Ricky Collins. So from your understanding of Ricky, where is he? Had we seen him on Saturday, between what we did see and, what we know from, McCord, who was spectacular last year?
Yeah, he's going to show more of, we saw some of the scrambles and the quarterbacks looking a little bit quicker, more athletic than what we saw from Kyle McCord. But obviously the pinpoint accuracy and the ability to manipulate coverage and, look off a guy and go through his reads and all those types of things that we got so used to. I think some of these back shoulder throws or the pinpoint accuracy on deep balls and those types of things, after you watch Kyle McCord for 3 or 4 games, you just kind of take it for granted. And the more I reflect back on what he did for Syracuse, the more I'm thinking maybe that's part of where the Ohio State issue was, is that they just kind of took that accuracy for granted after watching him a couple of games, and that's sort of where some of the angst came from. But either way, you're starting to see that not everyone is that and how special that was. Now, I think Ricky can be better than what we saw in terms of accuracy from some of the guys on Saturday. He's not going to be Kyle McCord, but he's going to bring that other element. And I do think that he has the arm talent to be a really good quarterback at this level.
Following up my last question, after watching the spring game, where do you think Syracuse needs to go to improve this roster in the transfer portal coming?
It's hard to derive too much from the wide receivers because, again, they're being very vanilla. Quarterbacks were out there. They're young. They're inexperienced. And they're extra amped up, too, right, because they're trying to show something. But, that anytime you have a chance to add a deep threat, I think you would take it. I think some of the guys that we saw flashes from could end up being that. But if you've got someone with experience that's out there, maybe you look at that. Offensive line, I think you can never have too many offensive linemen. And one of my biggest question marks, even going into the spring, was pass rushing. So if you've got a chance to add an edge player who can make an impact, who can rush the passer, I'll throw a name out. I have no idea if Syracuse was going to go after this guy, but they were linked to him when he entered the portal in the previous window, which is A.J. Pena, who was an All-American edge rusher from Rhode Island who signed with Memphis. He's re-entering the portal after going through the spring. So would they take a look at someone like that, that has the potential to be a pass rushing difference maker? Those are kind of the biggest areas, I think. Offensive line, pass rusher. I know that they've got a kid from Stanford that's on campus, I believe, right now, who's a corner. So obviously they're thinking if they can add experienced secondary help, they'll take it. But anytime you have a chance to take a difference maker, I think regardless of position, you go after that guy.
Yeah, I think that's Julian Neal, who's in from Stanford right now, Mike. And so is a quarterback in Zach Gibson will be from Georgia State, I believe is the right Georgia. And
yes.
I'm going to assume that Fran is not shocked when one of his main assistant coach's kids goes in the portal like Michael Johnson did. I would have guessed that probably didn't catch them off guard. What do you make of the moving there at the quarterback room, kind of deeper down the line?
I think the fact that we found out about the visit before Michael Johnson made his announcement that he was going into the portal tells you that the coaching staff knew that this was coming and the visit was scheduled, as they were trying to find a replacement for him. And it makes sense, right? I know Michael Johnson doesn't have a ton of experience, but he's been in college for several years. And this Zach Gibson guy from Georgia State, he doesn't have a ton of playing experience, but he did throw for 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. He does have several starts over the course of his career, so it's kind of a one-for-one replacement, someone with experience, but not tons of experience, not someone that you're expecting is going to seriously challenge Ricky Collins. But if something were to happen where Ricky Collins is hurt or really, really, really struggles and you need to make a change, he's someone that has experience and could perhaps step into that spot. So it makes a lot of sense from a Syracuse perspective. From his perspective, I have to imagine that it's one of those where he isn't getting a lot of opportunities to be the surefire starter, and so he's looking to find a team where he could at least compete for the number 2 spot, which would give him a chance because you're always one play away from going in at that point.
Mike, before we move on to basketball, anything else you want to hit on football?
No, I think that's pretty much it. And that and the fact that they had a bunch of really highly talented recruits on campus this weekend, players that were under the radar, players that were ranked in the top 20 overall players in the class, and Calvin Russell, the wide receiver from Florida. It's just incredibly impressive. You get a player of that caliber who's up at Syracuse for their spring game. He's from Florida. He's ranked on 24/7 Sports, the number 18 player in the entire class. Georgia, Alabama, Miami, etc., all schools that are in his top 12 all had their spring game on the same day. He decided to take the longest travel, come up to Syracuse for the spring game. That's pretty incredible to me.
It's a different vibe. Like, what do they do? Like, I don't know what the answer is, but we were talking. There were hundreds of kids on the field prior to the game. What is Fran Brown doing to get that amount of players interested in Syracuse? Is there an answer to that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One, whenever there are off periods, they are traveling the country and visiting schools whenever those windows are open per NCAA rules, and they hit lots of schools. They develop a lot of relationships. And so, yes, they bring recruits that they're after and they're trying to get, but then also it's the fact that he has made a big priority to develop relationships with Central New York high school football coaching programs, regardless of whether they have players that are FBS Power 4 level players or not. It doesn't matter if they're of that caliber. He's developing the relationships and inviting several of those players, the coaching staffs, et cetera. It's just the way that he is and the way he operates and values relationships that he's able to accomplish things like that. It's been very impressive.
We got Mike McAllister with us, our weekly Monday visit. All right, Mike, let's hit some hoops here. I've been stalking Jerry Deng's Instagram far too much than I'd care to admit over the last week. This happening? What's going on with this 6'9" shooter from Florida State by way of Rochester?
Yeah, all of the rumblings are that Syracuse is in the best position there. We're waiting for some sort of official word or for him to pop up as visiting here or somewhere else. It's been very quiet, but that's kind of been the way that they've operated most of the time, outside of Brian getting housing intel from people visiting.
Hey, so we don't give away my sources here on the housing market, Mike.
That's right. So, it's just kind of. I think Syracuse is in the best position there. It's made sense from a lot of standpoints. He's from Rochester. His favorite player is Carmelo Anthony. He's exactly what Syracuse needs on this roster, which is someone that can play the 3 or the 4. So you got versatility in position. He can shoot from the outside. And, Jordan mentioned to me off the air, he was playing at Florida State, so he's used to not playing a ton of minutes. So if he comes here and has to compete with other players 4 minutes, he still might end up playing more minutes here than he was at Florida State. So it seems to make a sense from a lot of standpoints. Does it make it more difficult to scout a player because of how Leonard Hamilton did things, where everybody was just getting 18 minutes? Can you tell if a kid's good enough from what you've seen out of Florida State? That does make it more difficult, but what helps in a situation like him and in a situation like William Kyle, to be honest, is the fact that they played more at a previous stop. And he played his freshman year at Hampton. And so you can take the film that you saw him at Florida State, even though the minutes are limited. And we don't know if they also have access to practice tape, if they have access to private workout tape. And then they can also review tape of his previous stop at Hampton. So that type of stuff helps as well. When you're trying to evaluate him, or even William Kyle, who they also got committed, who didn't play a ton at UCLA last year, they've got his tape from South Dakota State. So they can kind of use all of that to make a more informed decision.
And the women's team finally got a player. Do we give Fran Brown credit for Donovan Darius's daughter, which is an electric tongue twister, signing for her, 6th year of college here this weekend? Dominique Darius, Donovan Darius's daughter. Yes, I think I said all those words right, Mike.
Yes, I think you did. I think the way that Syracuse fans operate is that Fran Brown gets credit for everything good that happens around Syracuse fan players.
Yeah, that's how we roll.
If Syracuse men's lacrosse ends the streak and gets back to the Final Four, it's because Fran Brown is on staff. That's the way my understanding of how this works. So,
well, they didn't make it when he wasn't here, Mike.
That's exactly right. So, listen, it's a cool thing. Donovan was here to check out the spring game and to visit. We know the Camden connection, all that means a lot to Fran Brown. So, I would have to imagine that Fran Brown probably spoke with Donovan or Dominique at some point over the weekend. And, Syracuse gets a commitment from a guard who hasn't played a ton during her college career, looking for a larger role for sure. But when she has shown some flashes and, had a year where she shot the ball really well from 3. And, We'll see how it plays out, but certainly gives Syracuse some depth at the guard position, which you can never have too much of.
It feels like they need some more, though, right, Mike? You look at the women and what they lost from last year. They still need a few more acquisitions here.
Yeah, I would think so, and you'd like to maybe get an impactful scorer, someone that you can kind of give the ball to and can isolate a little bit and get you a bucket when you need it. I think that would be something that would be a huge addition to the roster. I don't know where that's going to come from, but I don't think the women's basketball roster is complete by any means.
Mike, one last thing before we let you go. Since the last time we talked to you, 2 Syracuse players, basketball players, have entered the transfer portal somehow.
The portal is still confused. They're both there.
What do you make of the chances of Eddie Lampkin and Lucas Taylor ending up somewhere else and getting another year of basketball?
It's the NCAA, so you never know. I think their best chance is to threaten with a lawsuit, and then the NCAA will probably cower and say, nope, we're not doing that, and give them their extra year. But, in all seriousness, I have to imagine that Eddie Lampkin's chances are pretty slim. I know he only played in 10 games his first year, but he played in 4 full years after that. So I can't really imagine how much of a case he has. But, again, it's the NCAA, so you never know. I thought it was a slam dunk decision to let Syracuse play Colorado in their spring game, and they said no because of academics while the NCAA tournament was going on. So you just never know what lunacy they're going to come up with. As far as Lucas Taylor goes, I think he's got more of a case, but either way, I'll never hold it against someone if they want to keep playing, and if the NCAA allows them to, then hopefully they're able to find success at their next location.
I lied, Mike. One last thing. What about all the players that did leave Syracuse? It's been kind of quiet. You heard any rumblings on where they're going? Or?
No, I haven't heard anything. The most recent thing I heard was that Pittsburgh was showing some interest in Chris Bell, I believe. This was the latest thing. But, yeah, there's been very little buzz around. I know Chris Bell's taken a few visits, but other than him, I haven't heard much of anything from anyone else. So that's got to tell you, perhaps the market isn't what they were hoping it would be for their services, but also when you've got thousands of players in the transfer portal, I mean, it's very easy for some to get lost.
All right. Mike, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you again next Monday.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
It's Mike McAllister. He does it every Monday. We call it McAllister Monday.
We do. I'm rooting for Eddie Lampkin to get another year and use it at New Orleans so he can study the Cajun arts and bring it back to big fellas so we can benefit.
Someone said, Paul, call Chris Bell's dad and ask him. He called me from a block number.
That's
so
true. You have no means of calling
how to get a hold of it. He didn't have the sack to call me from his own number.
Chris Bell's dad, please call Paulie back. We've got questions.
Don't block it this time.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take a time out, come back and share some tragic news that happened over the
Terrible
weekend.
News.
It's ESPN Radio Syracuse, Utica Roma, QSportsTalk.com.